Hi, I'm Selena from Annie's Bookstop of Worcester, and I'm here with Nancy Churnin, who is a children's book, nonfiction children's book writer. And for readers unfamiliar with your work, how would you describe what you write?
I look for stories about people that kids might not know about otherwise. People who had a dream, who persevered, and changed the world for the better. Um, and I know that one of the books we're going to talk about, sometimes I'll write about people and sometimes I'll write about events. But it's very important to me that they are people who change the world for the better, because I hope these books will inspire kids to be heroes and heroines too.
That's wonderful. So, what can what do you think draws readers to these kinds of books?
I think, sometimes when you write about great things, a child might react and say, well, that's really cool, but that could never happen. But when they read my books, they know these things can happen, that these were ordinary people, because I really try and look for the people who are not usually written about, and people who are really very ordinary, people who they can relate to in many ways. And what makes them extraordinary is not their size or stature or wealth or power, because very often they don't have that. But because they had a dream, nothing could stop them. They persevered against the obstacles, and the kids know they can do that too. And not only did they make their dreams come true, but they didn't make the world a better place. I think kids feel small in their world, and it's a scary world. We are surrounded by terrible news usually, and they to know about people who persevered in difficult times and achieved their dreams, I think encourages them to know if they persevere, they can attain their dreams and make a difference in the world too.
Okay, can you like quickly give a few names of some of the people you've written about?
Oh, okay. So a few names. Well, I mean, here we are in Worcester, Massachusetts, right? And Esther Howland is a heroine who was born in Worcester, and she created the first Valentine card company. Um, Ours was the first Valentine card company, and it took off and became so successful. When she talked to her father about it, he said, "Oh, Americans are never going to waste money on Valentines." But she had a dream and she persevered. And the other story about behind the story is that she knew that not everybody is good at articulating their feelings, but she loved to express big feelings. So by creating these Valentines, she gave other people a voice. So
And
that's yeah.
she's from Worcester.
She is from Worcester, and I worked with the wonderful Worcester Historical Museum. They are thanked in the back matter and also thanked here because they gave us permission to reproduce two of Esther's original Valentines, which they have in the museum. So these were all handmade. She had all her girlfriends come up to the third floor bedroom in her parents' house. She created an assembly line before Henry Ford did with a car. And they just, one person cut, one person pasted, one person um, added the gilt edges or the lace. They all worked together and they created this incredible business. She was a woman entrepreneur. This was in the 1800s. I have to tell you too, when the Civil War came, she just assumed that that would be the end of her business because everyone is thinking about war. But she soon found out that people wanted her Valentine's more than ever because they could send it to loved ones, people they were missing. And so that became another aspect of the Valentine's. See? And
Wow.
yes, and so people would want that for their loved ones, and it really went crazy during and after the Civil War.
Great. So, yeah, New England has influenced your writing quite a bit too, hasn't it?
Very much so. Uh,
And so, who are some of the other people that you wrote about that were from New England?
oh, from New England, well, Catherine Lee Bates, right? From Falmouth, Mass, and then later Wellesley. She's the one who gave. I always love to ask the kids who wrote America the Beautiful. And usually when I do a presentation, a hand goes up and they say, Francis Scott Key. And I go, No, not quite. He did the Star Spangled Banner, but it was a woman. And so then the hand goes up again, and the child might say, Mrs. Francis Scott Key. I just don't know why Catherine Lee Bates isn't more famous. Now, you may know her more in New England, but I wanted everyone to know this incredible woman who was a child of the Civil War, who wrote this song really to try to knit a country back together, which is still such a relevant goal because our country is so divided. And when you think about the words of that song, which was a poem before it was set to music, talks about our country from sea to shining sea. She wanted to remind us we're one American family. So that was very moving to me. I've also written about Elizabeth Freeman, who is one of the reasons for Massachusetts being one of the first free states in the US, because she took her enslaver to court and won. But I know that you might want me to be talking about Rainbow Allies, which is a very contemporary story. And this one is really even more about an event than a person. It's about a neighborhood. The hero of this book is a neighborhood. And this is a true story, Rainbow Allies, the true story of kids who stood against hate. In 2016, a couple named Carrie and Lori Riding lived in their community in Natick, wonderful community in Natick, Massachusetts, a wonderful community where everybody was welcome. They come home one day to find their house egged and their pride flag torn down. And they are devastated. And the children see it. And the children, and this is a particular child named Brendan, and I kept the real names. Carrie and Lori are real people. Brendan was a real child who wanted to help and make a difference. But what can kids do? Really, what can kids do in the face of hate? When I was talking earlier about kids being overwhelmed by the events of the world, hate is such a scary thing. What can a child do? And he and his friends, and again, the real names landed in Summer, and there were others too, but these are real kids with real names. They try to come up with ideas for how to help. None of the ideas feel like good ideas because they didn't want to be vengeful. They didn't want to be exclusive. They wanted to find some way of showing Carrie and Lori they were loved and included. I don't know if you want me to give away what they did, but their solution was very beautiful, and it is a true story. And it transformed the whole event for Carrie and Lori. And as a matter of fact, they said that to me, and I have that in the back matter. Just to quote Lori, it completely transformed the experience for us. We are very grateful to the children for standing with us and showing the world that kindness and love matter. And one thing I am hoping that this book will encourage other kids to be allies as well. And that's why in the back matter, you will find how to be an LGBTQ ally. You can also go to both my website and the website of the publisher, Beaming Books, and download a one-page on how to be an ally, in addition to a free teacher's guide, a coloring page, all sorts of like cool things, even a bingo card that kids can play and cross off, you know, as they do their as they show their allyship.
It's great. And that that is your latest book, actually, that was just published.
July 9th. So we are actually talking a few days before this comes out. By the time
Oh,
this is,
it hasn't even come out yet.
baby, you are getting an early look at this July 9th, baby. So yeah.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Illustrated by Izzy Evans. They are non-binary. They live in England, and Izzy Evans, I think you'll be delighted with the beautiful job she did. She did such an interesting thing too. One of the conversations we had was how should she do the flags, because the flag has changed over the years.
Right.
So the decision was made, go with the flag of when that was used when this happened, which was 2016. So this is the 2016 flag. But what Izzy did, look at the end papers. In the end papers, you get to see all the flags over the years.
That's wonderful.
So cool.
So, what was the actual inspiration for Rainbow Allies?
I was at a writing retreat. I had just my very first book had come out, which was the William Hoy story, which is a true story about the deaf baseball player who introduced signs to baseball so that he could play the game he loved. By the way, safe, out, American Sign Language. We have William Hoy to thank. We're trying to get him in the National Baseball Hall of Fame. So I was on one of my very first writing retreats, never had been on one before. And when I was working on my projects there, I always check the news because I'm a journalist. I'm actually right now a retired journalist. I do the books full time, but I'm always checking the news. And then I saw this news story about what had happened in Natick. This was in 2016. And I saw what happened and I was so deeply moved, because hate is a terrible thing. I always write books about kindness and love and bringing people together. And the way these kids found of bringing people together, I wanted to tell that story. I've written a lot of books in between, but I was always working. This was a harder story to tell. And it took me quite a few years to figure out the way to tell it. Also, but what I did right away was I reached out to Carrie and Lori. As a journalist, I kind of know how to track people down. So I found them. I actually got them on the phone. I talked to them and made sure that they were happy with me telling their story. And they've been involved every step of the way. And they put me in touch with the other parents. They put me in touch with the kids. So I got to talk to them and know that they were excited and happy about their story being told. And that was very, very important to me. Another one of the things that I know in the back matter also that had inspired me was, I don't know if you recall the event in Billings, Montana in 1993. Um, Somebody had thrown a rock through the window of a young boy who had a menorah on his windowsill because during Hanukkah, you're supposed to display your menorah for all to see. But somebody had thrown a rock through the window, which was a very ugly thing to do. And again, that community found a beautiful way to support this child. Um, the newspaper printed a picture of a paper menorah, and everybody in that community either put a real menorah or cut out that paper menorah and put it in their
Wow.
windows. And it made me cry because, hate is scary. And a lot of us, if you're not brave, you might want to be a bystander and just say, "Oh, nothing. I don't want to say anything. I don't want to draw attention to myself." But the way to protect people is to show that you are all one. That's what the people in Billings, Montana did. There is a beautiful book, a couple of beautiful books about that story as well. And when I saw this story, I thought that's in the same spirit. And I just want to share this because I also get afraid of hate. But what gives me courage and what I hope will give the kids courage is seeing that there are ways to stand up that are peaceful, that are inclusive, that are loving, and that are powerful.
That's wonderful. So the research that you did um, for this book included obviously pet story, but what other research did you do?
I think the main research, this was a case of really talking to all the people involved and just making
Okay.
sure I got that story right. And, you asked me earlier about the New England connection. I did live in Cambridge for 4 years as an undergraduate, and I love New England, and I feel very comfortable there. And I've spent time at both the Eric Carle Museum when they had my Dear Mr. Dickens on display, and the Yiddish Book Center, where I worked on my book about Henrietta Zoll, The Queen to the Rescue. So I felt really comfortable and familiar with the area. And for me, after that, it was just a question really getting to know Carrie and Lori and the parents and the kids. And I remember for the back matter, one of the questions I asked the parents was basically, how did you raise such great kids? I mean, what did you do? Why did your kids step up, in this eh, beautiful way? And they, what they shared with me is what I share in the back matter. How to be an LGBTQ ally is not coming from some academic place. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but this is coming out of the mouths of the parents. And I have to say, I was a theater critic for many years, and this song that comes back to me that went through my head when I was writing this is "You Have to Be Carefully Taught" from Rodgers and Hammerstein's South Pacific. It was such a wise song, and there's a reason that that show won the Pulitzer Prize, which, by the way, the producers wanted to pull that song. They said, how does that advance the plot? Well, it's the whole point. And if you're not familiar with the words of why do kids hate? You have to be taught before it's too late, before you are 6 or 7 or 8, to hate all the people your relatives hate. You have to be carefully taught. So what these parents were telling me is kids are not born hating. They're not born seeing a difference between one marriage and another marriage. You have to actually teach them to hate. And we did not teach them to hate. We taught them, we just let them be and be open and not throw hate upon them. But what we did do proactively was teaching them how to be a good friend, to be sensitive when you see somebody is hurt, to speak up right away when a wrong has been done, to take action to try to make things better. And they also said, and also understand if not everybody joins you, just work with the people who will.
Wonderful. Okay. So, what was the biggest challenge that you had in writing and putting out Rainbow Allies?
I think the biggest challenge, and the reason why I kept rewriting it and rewriting it over the years while I worked on other books, because I have many other books that came out between 2016 and now, is because, I am a former journalist. And I think my first attempts were maybe too journalistic. I had to find a way to bring it to life in a way that a child would connect to, in a way that a child would want to turn the pages. And I think my real brainstorm moment, like the ding 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 moment, like eureka moment, was when I realized in this case, my main character was not a person, even though all the people involved were important. I realized the main character here was the neighborhood. That's why it starts in Natick, Massachusetts. There is a neighborhood that looks like many others. It isn't the biggest or the fanciest. Many pass through, not realizing the secret that makes it shine. Everyone is welcome. Everyone is celebrated. Everyone helps each other. Kids play at each other's houses, dogs greet one another on walks, and adults buy lemonade from the children's stands. And so when this terrible thing happens, it's hurting the neighborhood. And the neighborhood has to come up with a solution. And the kids see that their neighborhood, which they loved for these very reasons, that it was so inclusive and everybody looks out for each other, something was broken and they wanted to fix it. And it begins and it does end, and I guess I'm not supposed to read the ending, but it does end again with their neighborhood. Once again, their neighborhood was a place where everyone is welcome, where everyone is celebrated, where everyone helps each other. So
Mm-hmm.
asked me about my previous books, and most of them are biographies about people. And so again, the key was the neighborhood is the main character here.
That's totally different.
Yes, and all these wonderful people, though, are very important, but they're part of this neighborhood. And I just love the fact that I started in 2016, and here it is 2024. Even though it's 8 years later, Carrie and Lori is still happily married. They are still in the same house, in the same neighborhood. These kids, their families are still in that neighborhood. Some of them are in college now, but actually, Mary Saladna of Channel 5 in Needham. She did a wonderful story, and she interviewed like the grown-up Brendan, who is the kid who was pictured on the bicycle here. And everything, they feel proud and they feel good. It's a wonderful neighborhood, but I think all our neighborhoods could be that way. In a way, I mean, it's just, they talk about a shining city on a hill. I mean, this is a shining neighborhood. I hope this book inspires others to make their neighborhoods this beautiful. And again, it's not about being the biggest, it's not about being the fanciest. It's about making a neighborhood that is inclusive and full of love and support for everyone in it.
All I can hope is that it's not banned in certain areas.
Well, I agree with you. But I had to think about that. I do a lot of school presentations. I live in Texas now, even though I'm a native New Yorker. And I lived in New England for a few years. But I just felt this needed to be out there. And I'm really proud to have it out there. And I just think it's important in life to do the right thing, and you deal with what happens. But to be an upstander. Was it
Mhm.
easy to be an upstander? Well, I hope people will find it. I hope we'll encourage more people to be upstanders, to just stand up. And that's what I tried to do with this book.
Do you know if booksellers in your area are going to be selling it?
Oh, well, in Terabang Books, which is right near me, which is in Dallas, they are not only selling it, they are having my launch party on
Wonderful.
my 13th. Yes, we're gonna have a story time. I'm gonna read it. We'll be giving out coloring pages for the kids, and I'll be handing out the one sheet on how to be an ally. So, I'm gonna go wherever I'm invited. I'm gonna share the book wherever it's welcome. But you know what? It's simply a book about love and inclusion. I had one person say to me, yes, this is a book about, allyship with the LGBTQ community. But people can also say this is allyship with any community that's being
Right.
discriminated against. Because the principle is simply, if you see somebody who has been targeted, who is being hurt, we need to let them know they're loved, they're important, they're valued. We stand with them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so what else can we expect from you in the near future?
Well, another book that's coming up that I'm very excited about, this will be next spring. I don't have the book since it's not till next spring, but I did make a poster of the cover because I love it so. A Teddy Bear for Emily and President Roosevelt too. So you might say that this is a little bit of historical fiction because I make up some dialogue in this one. But the story is absolutely true. The history is true. The family is true. This is the true story of the immigrant family from Brooklyn that created the first, and look at the words, Teddy's Bear, because it was made for Teddy Roosevelt. They wanted to thank this kind president. The story is instead of shooting a bear on a hunting trip, he saved the bear. And everybody was so touched by this. But above and beyond this, what's the point that's made here is that these were immigrants. President Teddy Roosevelt was a big supporter of immigrants. He was actually the governor of New York, where this family immigrated to before he became president. And he championed immigrants and everybody's right to, live in peace and and fulfill their dreams. So they wanted to thank him for his overall kindness. It was the Mitchum family, real family. They had their child, Emily, was 9 years old at the time. And so I wrote a teddy bear for Emily because I imagined Emily as helping her mother sewing the bear that her father designed. So that's where I took
Wonderful.
a little bit of liberty because very little is written about that. But think about it. She's 9 years old. Her mother is sewing the bear. There's a little brother involved. It's interesting. Her little brother Benjamin is just 1 year old. And later he will become the president of the Parents Toy Company. Little Benjamin, whom we see as a little baby in the story. There's also, it's a Jewish immigrant family, and so there is some Yiddish sprinkled in. My dear friend Miriam Udell, who is a professor and a scholar of Yiddish, she fact checked it all, and she made sure every Yiddish word is correct and used appropriately and spelled appropriately. And I'm very proud of that. So I dedicated it to her and to my immigrant grandparents.
Great. Okay, I have questions now about being a writer. What's your favorite part about being a writer on the whole writing and publishing process?
It's interesting. Woke up this morning working on a story. I always feel so energized when I am working on a story. I mean, stories are so magical. Um, when you think about it, they take you back in time, especially if you do historical things as I do. They take you, across to different places. So all of a sudden, oh, right now I'm in Brooklyn. Right now I'm in Natick. Um, right now I'm in England. They take you all over. And then but the most magical place they take you is into other people's hearts. And if you truly find that place where your heart connects with the people that you're writing about, I believe there's a magical alchemy that occurs. And then that heart, that becomes alive in the book. And when a child opens that book, they can find that heart, and they may find things that they need, that will help them in their lives. Tennyson wrote in his poem Ulysses, I am a part of all that I have met. And I think when we create a book, when I write about somebody, they become a part of me. And when a child opens that book, now that person becomes a part of them and their story. And it might be the story that helps them. It might be the story they need. And that's what I love so much about it. I mean, I feel privileged to be able to do what I do. I'm really grateful.
That's great. So, what do you consider the most challenging part of the writing process?
I think the most challenging part, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, again, I was thinking about the story I was working on this morning. It's writing is a craft, and you have an idea. I have this whole book pictured in my head, but there's a difference between what's pictured in your head and what ends up on the page. And so I remember, as when I was a journalist, I was a theater critic. I wrote about children's books. I wrote about children's movies, entertainment. And I remember when I wrote about children's books, I got to interview the great writer Judy Blume. And I said, well, it's a typical journalist question. If you had a magic wand and you could, what would you make happen? And she says, if I had a magic wand, I'd make that awful first draft just come out of my head and just like sand that you pour in a sandbox. She says, because not until you get that first draft out can you start to shape the story. And that's true, because I got my rough draft out this morning, and I'm thinking, well, this needs a lot of work, but at least I know where it begins. I know the middle. I know the ending. I know what I'm trying to do. But you really have to get in there like you're working with clay, like you're carving wood, like you're playing with the sand, to use, her metaphor. So and that's challenging. And the other part that's always challenging is when somebody doesn't see your vision right away. You have to always figure out, is it because I haven't gotten it right yet, or because I haven't found the editor who can see it yet? And is I've been really fortunate to find editors who have understood what I'm trying to do. And it's not like it's done even after they accept something. I've never had something that didn't need further editing, but they have to see it enough to want to go on that final leg of the journey with you. You have to bring them something that is as good as you can make it, and then they help you, and then the illustrator as well. So, but yeah, that decision about, okay, do I stick to what I'm trying to do, or do I change it completely? And I will be very honest with you about Rainbow Allies. When I was struggling to figure out how to tell it in a way that it would be not a journalistic article, but a compelling picture book, I tried every which way to tell the story. There was one version that was in rhyme with very good meters. didn't work. But I had to exhaust all the ways. I remember I wrote a chapter book about Thomas Edison once, and I never forgot he said something to the effect of, I haven't failed. I just have found all the ways that don't work yet. And sometimes you have to just try it many different ways before you find the way that works. And then you have to know again whether you really have or you just think you have, and whether and again, if you found the right person to take it the rest of the way home.
So, what has been your favorite adventure during your writing career?
Oh my goodness. There's just been so many adventures. I mean, so many of them, so many of the adventures have been in my mind. I have to, no, it's true. No, I have to say that when I wrote Dear Mr. Dickens, which was the book that was featured at the Eric Carle Museum as part of their exhibit on picture books about writing letters, I went to London to the Charles Dickens Museum, and the Charles Dickens Museum is housed in one of his former homes. And
Wow.
just going through that home and seeing how they lived, I mean, complete with it. I mean, I didn't put a chamber pot in the book, but it was interesting to me to know that there were, yeah, wow, yeah, there were chamber pots under the beds in those days. And just to get a feeling, what the houses looked like and the smells that would have come up, and really immerse myself. I love immersing myself. Like, for instance, I love going to places where I can immerse myself. So for instance, I haven't written a book about Emily Dickinson, who is one of my favorite poets. I haven't written that book, but I have gone to her house when I was in the area, and I must have spent hours there, just sort of when you're in the home of somebody, even if they're no longer there, and you're looking and at the desk that they wrote on, the bed that they slept in, something happens where you're just kind of feeling a presence and a spirit, and you live in such a rich area. I know that when I come back, one of the things on my list is Louisa May Alcott was one of my favorites. Oh my gosh, the Transcendentalists, Thoreau, I mean, just all these people. And you have preserved in New England, you've preserved that history. You've preserved the homes, the places. It's just beautiful.
Hmm. Okay. For going to London
Uh,
to do the research, it must have been fabulous.
Oh, it was absolutely fabulous. And the thing that also feels so good is that the Charles Dickens Museum loved the book so much that they're featuring it in an educational program, which you can
Ah,
actually virtually hear, but it's also in person in the museum. And they told me they were telling me about a group that they had booked for October. And I'm so excited. I hope I'll get a chance. I have Zoomed with some of the classes in the past, and I hope I get to do that again. I remember the last time though I Zoomed with one of the classes, I think it was 4 in the morning my time. So I made myself a nice cup of tea. And of course, I got into that because, in London, they're very into their cup of teas.
yes.
Um, yes, but I was so energized just by being with them. It was glorious. Oh, the other thing that's very cool about this is after this book came out, I mean, it's about Charles Dickens and a woman named Eliza Davis, a Jewish woman who lived in London that time, and wrote to him and told him she was unhappy with his portrayal of Fagin. It was an ugly anti-Semitic stereotype. She wanted him to do better. And because of her, he writes his first positive Jewish character, Mr. Rian, our mutual friend. Plus, he starts speaking up for the Jewish community in England. And things start changing and getting better in their lifetimes. So, what happened though after this came out, I heard from Lucinda Hawksley, who was a descendant of Charles Dickens, writing to me about how much she loved the book because Charles Dickens gets labeled with the, ugly anti-Semitic label. People don't know about how his heart changed in his later life. She even had me on her interview show. But then what I really couldn't believe, because I tried so hard to track down descendants of Eliza Davis, and I couldn't do it. But the museum put me in touch with a descendant of Eliza Davis, who said this was the pride of her family. This story was the pride of her family. I'm not just
Oh,
like that, but it was a family story that brought them great pride. And she even sent me an oil painting of Eliza Davis. I mean, she
wow.
didn't send me a painting, a picture of the painting. That she was very proud of. So one of my dreams is just to get the descendant of Eliza Davis together with the descendant of Charles Dickens. Wouldn't that be marvelous?
That would be fabulous. Yeah, that's your journalistic thing, right? Just
Oh,
get them together.
okay, but I have to tell you one more, like this is a little bit bizarre. So you look at this picture of Eliza Davis that the illustrator Bethany Stancliffe did just based on, we only had one existing photo at the time, and it was at the University of Southampton. So this is Eliza Davis as, you know, an elderly woman. So here she is, she imagines her as a younger woman, right? Because she's a younger woman in the story. So when the descendant of Eliza Davis sent me that picture of the oil painting, I am going to have to mail you this image. It looks exactly like her. And I
Oh,
fell off my chair. I went, I mean, you know, and it's like one of those surreal things where was Bethany channeling this? Did this woman just need her story to be told? And somehow she just, I mean, I don't mean to get all like kind of, you know, fifth dimension on you or something, but it was almost, I felt so good about it. And I felt so good about the descendants loving the book, Dickens scholars loving the book, the museum, and then to see that the real Eliza Davis actually looks like this. I will
great.
that image. Selena, I will send you that image. You will be blown away.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's a great story. So, so what is the greatest lesson that you've learned thus far in your writing career?
I think the greatest lesson I've learned is to write from the heart. You know, not to get distracted about thinking about, oh, what do the editors want or what's going to sell or and even not to be discouraged and give up on something that you really believe in. You know, I told you about how this one took 8 years. And I have many books in print. So it's not like I haven't been working. These are like, here's like, oh, some of my books, and there's more now. But Dear Mr. Dickens, which I was just telling you about, I wrote the first version of this in 2013. This didn't come out till 2021.
Wow.
And many people said, well, no one's going to be interested in a story about letters. No one's going to be interested in, the kids don't know who Charles Dickens is. They certainly don't know who Eliza Davis is. This book came out. It won the National Jewish Book Award, Sidney Taylor Honor, Junior Library Guild Selection, first place in Women's Press Association, like all kind, and it's done very well. But in the beginning, the people I shared it with did not believe in it, but I believed in it. And so I just held on to it, and I go back and I tinker with it and I work with it. And when I found an editor, I thought, you know, it was very interesting. As you know, Celine, I do a lot of biographies. So this particular editor, she said, what do you have for me next? And I started suggesting some other biographies I could do. And she says, I have so many biographies. Do you have anything that's about a historical event, maybe with two people instead of one? And I went, do I have a manuscript for you? I sent her this, and I think within a day she was bent on acquiring it, and it's been wonderful. So I didn't give up on it. I didn't get bogged down. I didn't get, but I don't take these things personally. Sometimes things have to wait for their time, and I'm not, even though this took a while, I think this is the right time for Rainbow Allies. I think
Absolutely.
this is the right time when we need to talk about allyship and coming together and caring for each other. Now that threats have increased, polarization has increased, I think this message of allyship and love and kindness, inclusion is more important than ever. So, you know, it's not, I'll continue to work on other things. Again, I don't take it personally if I can't find the right match for something, but if I believe in it, I won't give up on it.
Okay. So, what piece of advice would you want to share with other writers?
To follow your heart, to believe in yourself and your vision. There's a wonderful line. I don't know if it was Oscar Wilde who said this, so excuse me, I should have looked it up. He says, "Don't, you might as well be yourself because everyone else is taken." Um, there are books you admire, there are books you may use as mentor texts, but one of the glories of this world is none of us is exactly alike. And that is a strength of the world because yes, we all have so much in common, but we are also unique. Find that difference, that unique way you have of looking at the world. Follow your heart, tell your story in your way. Yes, of course, you can learn about, basic story structure, you can learn format, all this. This is all important. I'm not saying it's not important, but ultimately, the world is waiting for you to tell the stories only you can tell in the way only you can tell them. So find your voice, and you'll find your voice. People say, what does that mean, find your voice? I always say it's a matter of heart. Write the stories in your heart, the stories that just won't let you rest. This book wouldn't let me rest until I got it out in the world. This book,
Right.
and that's true of all my books. I write about the books that just my heart is just saying, I've just got to share this story. This is a story I've got to share. I'm not seeing it out there. I need to put it out there. That's why I'm always looking for the ones that aren't out there. Sometimes I'll see somebody who's done a wonderful job on something I was just thinking about. And my reaction is I don't get upset about that. I say, phew, they took care of that one and they did a really good job on it. I can move on to something else that, if not for me, it might not be in the world. So I focus on the ones that I can do, and I'm grateful. No one person can put all the books that children need in the world. So I applaud all my fellow writers for putting in the ones that I'm not going to put in.
Mhm. I think
And let's lift each
that's
other.
that's such a great thing. I mean, because these people do need their stories do need to be told. I mean,
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I don't want to write the 500th book on somebody who's we already know. Now, I'm not saying that those shouldn't be written because if that's what your dream is and you found this special thing about that person you want to say, go for it. But for me, I'm really drawn to the people whose stories might not be told. I don't think this book would have been in the world if, but again, I'm so grateful to Carrie and Lori and their wonderful neighborhood for trusting me with this book, their story. But I don't think anybody else was trying to do this. And it might not have been in the world if I hadn't just refused to let it go. I refused to let it go.
mhm.
I'm so glad. I'm also grateful my editor, Naomi Kruger at Beaming Books. She believed in this as well. She read the story and she said, I want to put this in the world too. And so I thank her. It's all, if I could say anything else to writers, it's all about collaboration. I mean, you may think that you're alone in that room working on that story, and to an extent you are, but you're also collaborating with your characters, with your people, and ultimately you'll be collaborating with other people who believe in your story and want to help you bring in the world. Your editor, your illustrator, the copy editor is going to catch things that you missed, and the art designer who's going to make it so beautiful, the marketing people who are going to get attention, get it in the hands of the people who need to see it, who are going to help spread the word. You, Selena, doing this interview with me, your bookstore, for making things available. And I know that you're at Annie's Bookstore, you are recommending books to families, to kids, the books that you feel they need. That's all part of this partnership. We're all working together.
Mhm.
We're not alone. And we are stronger together. And I'm so thrilled to be doing this interview with you. Thank you for reaching out to me and for caring so much about putting the books kids need in their hands. I know it's hard work what you do and what the bookstore does. It's not an easy job, and it's challenging, right? And you work hard at it because you know what you do matters, and it does. And I thank you for it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Um, My next question is, are there any groups, clubs, or organizations that you'd recommend to other writers that might have helped you in your career?
Oh, absolutely. The Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators was one of the very first that I joined. I actually have, I've done presentations for SCBWI. And I'm actually, in fact, I think I'm doing one on the 9th, and I'm going to focus on Rainbow Allies. This is for the SCBWI Mid-Atlantic. It's virtual, and I'll be talking about how you turn real life events into children's books. Um, I'm also a member of this wonderful group called the Nonfiction Ninjas. And yeah, I know, isn't that a fun name?
Love that.
Yes, and there are seven of us, and we do a lot of free things for the community. Like, for instance, this fall we're going to have a nonfiction contest, picture book contest. So people can send in their stories. There's going to be every February we have an NFS where every day weekday of February there'll be blog posts by great people, and it's all free. And then I think we're even planning, we might have a retreat, a revision retreat for people. So that's been a wonderful group of very supportive fellow writers. Um, I, there are some great groups out there. I'm also a member of 12 by 12 that was founded by Julie Headland. The goal is to write one manuscript a month. But the lovely thing is it's just such a supportive community with lots of webinars. And I've given one of the webinars, and she has a webinar every month, but people can ask questions, and people are very supportive, and they celebrate each other's victories. Kidlit 411, which is also, that's a free organization. 12 by 12 is a subscription one, but so worthwhile. Anyway, those are some of the ones that I belong to.
Great. Thank you. Now I have questions about you as a person. What is one thing that most people don't realize about you?
Well, now that I've known more from my children's books, a lot of people do not know that I used to be a journalist. Particularly I was a theater critic. I have interviewed some amazing people over the years, and as I was telling you, the list of my the children's book authors I've interviewed is very long. One of my favorites, I have to say, was Maurice Sendak, the late Maurice Sendak.
Wow.
I know. I remember saying I'm a journalist. So I had an interview with him. It was about an adaptation he did. He did an update of the Nutcracker, of all things. He did a libretto for that. And so they said to me when they set up the interview, okay, you can have like 10 minutes, maybe 10 minutes. Well, I mean, he's a big celebrity, important guy. So 10 minutes, I went, okay, I'll take it. I'll take 10 minutes with Maurice Sendak. I'll take it. And so they put me on the phone with him. And one of the first things I asked him where his family's from, because where the wild things are, he's talked about how it's been his family members, and he said Bialystok. Well, I said that's where my grandparents are from, which is true. My grandparents, Mary and Samuel Farber, were in the same little town of Bialystok, Poland, before they came to America. Which, by the way, they were in the same little town but never met there. They met in New York City in the Yiddish Theater, which is like, okay. I know, what are the odds? Once I told him that my family was from Bialystok, I think I talked to him for an hour. And
Wow.
we just were laughing, we were talking. It was just, we were talking about how, oh my gosh, like we were talking about the Nutcracker. I never saw it the same way again, because he talked about how it was so important to him that the little girl throws the slipper at the Rat King, because she's the slipper is such a slight thing, and yet it with the Mouse King, and yet it conquers the Mouse King. And for him, the slipper was analogous to being a writer or an artist, because it doesn't look like a powerful thing, a word or a picture, but yet it can slay hate and division. And that has inspired me, and that lesson has stayed with me every day. It stays with me every day. I always think about it. And he was so kind. I remember, again, I was still a journalist when the great author and writer Robert McCluskey, Make Way for Ducklings, passed away. And I was doing the obituary. So I reached out to see if Maurice Sendak would give me a quote about him. And he right back to me. I mean, I was on deadline and everything. So, I mean, there it is, the busy, the great, the wonderful Maurice Sundak. We'd made a connection, and he was just so sweet. And he gave me the most wonderful quote about how Robert McCluskey had a very different vision than he did. It was very sunny, but he loved that sunny vision, and living, basking in Robert McCluskey's world when he was reading a Robert McCluskey book. It was very different from a Maurice Sendak book, which is
Mm.
all sorts of, little grays and little darkness. But he loved that world, and he wanted to pay homage to it in Mr. McCluskey's obituary.
Wow. Okay. So, what is or are your passions when you're not writing, and how do you make time to do the things that you love?
Um, I love musicals. Yes, again, I was a theater critic for many years, so I've always loved theater and musicals, and very lucky to be here in the Dallas Fort Worth theater community. We have fabulous regional theater here, and I've stayed very involved in the theater even after I left my full-time job. Maintaining a page, going to see things where I can. And it's truly, truly been a joy. And my other little thing, I love learning languages. And I have to actually, I mean, I've been studying both Spanish and Hebrew right now. And I really enjoy it. As a matter of fact, I enjoy it a little too much. So I had to sort of say, you cannot study your languages until you finish your work on your draft. So it becomes like my little dessert for me. And I do my little Duolingo, and I'm just like moving along. And it's so much fun to learn different words and be able to communicate better with other people, and to sort of see the roots of different words. It's it's just fun.
Okay. Wow.
I think anything that breaks down, I think I'm all about breaking down walls between people. The books I write, I'm always trying to break down walls. Charles Dickens and Eliza Davis seem as different as can be, and the letters between them broke down the walls between them. Rainbow Allies, allyship breaks down the walls between people. And for me, studying languages is just another way of like breaking down walls, because I'm understanding now, when you understand different language and different words in that language, different expressions, it breaks down the walls between how you see things and how they see things, and sometimes you just get a beautiful new vision for the
Hmm.
world.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, what does your writing space look like? And what do you need to have around you when you're writing or editing? Do you like, for example, what kinds of food or drink do you need to have with you? And do you prefer music or silence when you're
I
writing? And if it's music, what kind of music?
I absolutely prefer silence while I write. Though I really have an ability to hyper focus. So that even if there is music playing, I'm not hearing it. I love music, but not when I'm writing. But the hyper focusing is kind of funny. I remember, as I said, I was a theater critic for many years. I remember my husband would sometimes accompany me to some of these shows. And then I could see him like getting agitated, and like after it was over, I'd say, what was the problem? Because he'd be complaining about something. He says, those people behind us were just talking nonstop. And I'm going, what people? Because if I'm focused on something, nothing else exists, right? I didn't hear the people behind me. I am just focusing on that play. And that's how I am with my story. So, I mean, things could be going, clattering, and all kinds of things. And I think it's also a survival method, because um I mean, my kids are grown now, but when they were little, I was writing. You have to be able to focus, otherwise you won't get anything done. But I'm just able to do that. When I'm not writing, I love musicals, and my husband's got me really into acoustic music, ballads. I love songs that say something, songs that are stories. I'm not much for songs that are just, if they just repeat the same line over and over again. And I'm not really into heavy drum work. My apologies to the percussionists. Um, I love classical, but I also just love stories. And I think that's why I like the musicals, because they're stories, but the ballads are like that too. You listen to someone like a Joni Mitchell or Jackson Brown or Carly Simon or Billy Joel, even though he's a little rocky, he's got rock, but yet his songs say something. I mean, whenever there's a story, you got me. I'm listening to the story. As for what I like to eat or drink, I'm a big water drinker. Maybe carbonated flavored drinks. But again, I'm so hyper focusing. I'm probably not going to be eating while I'm working, but I might get a treat afterwards. And I love things like herbal tea with honey, one of my favorites. That really gets me through. I love uh whole grain, a delicious whole grain bread with a tart cherry jam. That's like a real treat. And of course I'll never turn down dark chocolate. Really, really dark chocolate.
Oh, yeah. So what does your actual writing space look like?
Well, you're looking at it right now. So I have my bookshelves with my books behind me, and there are shelves underneath which have my extra books, which have my files. Um, my space is just this big table in which I can spread things out. I can just put my papers here. There's enough room so that I can bring up my iPad, I have my phone. So, because very often with the kind of stories I do, I'm always looking things up, checking this fact. When did this happen? Do I have the chronology correct? And so I want to have a couple of screens so I could be writing here and I can be looking things up here and going back and forth.
Writers very often have furry or feathered or otherwise non-human companions.
Oh, let's see.
I,
Oh,
I thought I heard something like a bark earlier.
yes. And wait, here's Gloria Swanson.
That's
She
not a barking thing.
No, I have a dog named, you want to guess my dog's name? My
Yes.
son named our dog, and our dog's name is Dog. And I call her Miss Dog so everyone knows that she's a girl. Now, I also have Toby the Terrible, who's in the other room. We're not going to bring him in here because he's really terrible. We love him, but he rips everything up. And he would probably try to attack you through the screen. But this is Gloria Swanson. She's my little diva. She thinks she's a movie star. She's just been like waiting for her close up all this time. And the other reason we call Gloria Swanson is that she seems to be a little obsessed with me. One of the reasons I get so much work done is because she does not like me to leave this room or this chair. She gets very offended every time I leave. So I have to stay. And as long as I stay, I might as well work. And we also joke this is the reason we'll never have a swimming pool, because if you've seen Sunset Boulevard, you know what happens to William Holden when he tries to leave Gloria Swanson. So but she's darling, isn't she? I love her
It's
so much.
adorable.
She's a good
She
girl.
doesn't look happy though.
Oh no, she's just always very serious and skeptical of everything. She's like got that kind of look at her. Look. And she said, like, you made me wait a long time to get on the screen. So,
When you're working, does she help, or do your any of your animals help or hinder you?
oh, well, it's a good question. This one is definitely a helper because all she wants to do is just have me be there, or be
Ah,
on my app or whatever. She's really easy. The other two, Mrs. Dog, is always just wanting to go in and out, and this is true of Toby too. You know how dogs and some cats can be like they want to go in. If they're in, they want to be out. If they're out, they want to be in. And then they always want treats. I've actually learned I have a comfortable chair that I sit in with bags of my dog treats. And I've had people kind of look at me like, why do you have dog treats in your chair while you work? Because I know dog is going to come up to me 100 times. And so every time she comes up, I'll give her one of the treats. Now I know you're not supposed to do that, but she's very active and she actually is in great shape. So
oh,
I'm
good.
keeping her.
I just have two more questions for you. Gosh, she's adorable.
I know. That's
Where can people find your work aside from Annie's Bookstop of Worcester? And we can get we can get Nancy's work if you call us at 508-796-5613, or you can email us at orders@anniesbooksworcester.com. And where else can people find your work?
I'm just so thrilled for them to go to Annie's. I love your mission. I love what you're doing. I love that you reached out to me. And I just can't help but thinking that all of my little New England stories, particularly Esther Howland of Worcester, she would love to have her story at your store. She always stayed in that area. She never left. That's her life. So I think they'd love to be there. I'm always so happy to be at independent bookstores, and I believe it's not really that hard, but I am so thrilled for them to go to you and to support you, and I appreciate you doing this interview.
Oh,
Also, if
thank
people
you.
want to know any more information about me, all my books come with free teacher's guides, projects, because remember I said I want the kids to inspire kids to be heroes and heroines too. That's why I've created a project for every book. So even Rainbow Allies, send me a picture of how you're an ally. Valentine's for all, be someone's Valentine. Why don't you share Valentine's with somebody who doesn't ordinarily get one? Maybe the custodian at your school, maybe the people at your senior center, maybe patients at the local hospital. Think about the people who don't get Valentine's. So all of my books come with projects. You'll find them on nancychurnin.com. And you'll find resources there as well. Lots of downloadables. And yeah, please support Annie's. I love Annie's, and I'm just
Thank
thrilled for my books to be there.
thank you. And how can we follow your work and share your awesomeness?
Oh, you're so sweet. Well, I'm on Facebook. I have my own page, which is Nancy Churnin, which it's just open to everybody. But I also have Nancy Churnin children's books, if you want to just have solely like focusing on the children's books. My website, I keep it up to date. Again, everything is available there, including ways to contact me, because I love to present, and I do things virtually depending on the opportunity in person. As a matter of fact, I'm going to be in Boston in November for the National Council for Teachers of English in November.
Oh,
So I'm
great.
doing something in town. I'm not sure. Like it's all like I want to see when my panel is and where my time is. On Twitter, I keep calling it Twitter. At nchurnin, NCHURNIN, and on Instagram, I am at nchurnin again, NCHURNIN. And again, my website has a contact page. Feel free to reach out. I think you'll find it full of lots of goodies. And I'd love to hear from people. I love to be able to support both the bookstores, the librarians, the teachers, the parents, the kids. That's why I do what I do. My mother's a retired teacher, and I know that as she did, she taught third grade. The kids are our future, and anything I can do to help and support, and I hope spread love and kindness, help kids to believe in themselves and to be upstanders, to be heroes and heroines, to know they can do anything, that they should hold fast to their dreams and persevere. Anything I can do to encourage that, I am so proud and honored for the opportunity to do that.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Nancy. It's been a great pleasure to be speaking with you. And hopefully when you get to Boston, you might be able to come and visit us.
I would love to. I would be so thrilled. And you know what? I'm going to be sending you some really cute little bookmarks. And
Bookmarks.
if you
Wonderful.
want, I can even send you some signed book plates. So
Great. That would be
let me
great.
know. Again, anything I can do to help and support it. It's such a pleasure.
Right.
It's just been such a joyful journey. I love being a journalist. I had such great opportunities to speak with great people. Um, but this has been the best time where I get to share these stories with kids and with all ages.
Great. Nancy Churnin, thanks very much for being with us.
Thank you, Selena.